Guten Tag and hello everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of the Märklin Outsider, where I'm running through the basics of the Märklin system. And that's actually what it's called. It's called the Märklin system. That includes both their style of track, their style of trains, the AC programming, and as I mentioned in episode 1, Märklin invented HO scale. If you're into HO scale, you are connected to Märklin. Alright, and so in today's episode, I'd like to briefly discuss the next stage of Märklin, which is C-Track. C-Track is sort of the modern age descendant of Märklin's original track, a tin and metal style of track called M-Track. And C-Track is just the modern equivalent of it in many ways. C-Track, or C-Gleis as it's called in German, is Märklin's primary track. Now, I don't know what the percentages of Märklin users out there who use K-Track, which is their non-pre-bedded track, versus people who use C-Track, this pre-bedded track. And I've mentioned it a few times in other videos, both in this series already and in the Model Train Outsider. But C-Track is Märklin's primary track. When you buy a train set, if it comes with track, it's going to come with C-Track. If you want K-Track, you have to buy it separately. They sell kits and expansion kits for K-Track. But when you buy a startup set, or if you buy any Märklin set that has track in it, it will always be C-Track. That's what they're after. Now, before I look at the track itself and just show you the basics, Märklin does everything on a 360 millimeter basis. For example, their primary radius curves are 1s. It is 360 millimeters between the center of the arc with an R1 track and the middle of the track. It's 360 millimeters. They then have a scale of 75.3 whatever millimeters between each track. And I'll put this arc diagram up again right now. Märklin has everything already mapped out for using K-Track or C-Track, but today we're talking C-Track. They have it already figured out. Everything is on this basis. Everything somehow adds up to 360 millimeters. And so, like any track company, Märklin comes in assortments of curves, R1, R2, R3, R4, R5, and then they have straights and turnouts. Just like anybody. But the two basic straights of Märklin are the 188, official code number 24188, and 172, 24172. All Märklin track is 24 followed by a number, and the number is the length of the piece. So 188 is 188 millimeters. A 172 is 172 millimeters. Märklin curves in C-Track are 24, and then a number which represents the curve, R1 to R5, and then the degree. So the basic Märklin curve, 24130, 24 means it's a Märklin C-Track, 1 means it's radius 1, and 30 means it's a 30-degree arc. So curved pieces, when you go to buy Märklin, curve pieces are 24130, 24230, radius 2, 24330, radius 3, and so on. But you get other pieces as well. There's a 24-degree curve, so you get 24, 2, radius 2, 24. It's a 24-degree arc. Anyhow, and all these pieces are preset and designed to adjust into Märklin's 360 millimeter system. Märklin has, over the years, published many books which display their not only their layout plans, but the algorithm that explains how their track works. They have it in any manual that comes with the startup set, and they have it with anything. There are hardbound books and pamphlets and so forth, and they all come with this explanation of how all their pieces fit together. They have it all designed for you, so that is one major advantage of C-Track, and even K-Track. They do the same for K-Track, but specifically with C-Track, they have it all mapped out so that everything lines up evenly as long as you follow their algorithm. My layout did not follow that algorithm because I was trying to recreate a very specific scene at a very specific train station, and so the curves and everything don't specifically line up. But be that as it may, let's look at some of the Märklin pieces and discuss the pros and cons.
All right, so here in front of you on one of my sideboard work areas, I have some of the basic pieces of Märklin C-Track. So let's look at, first of all, the basics of Märklin C-Track. Märklin C-Track is pre-bedded. The rails are already embedded on this hard plastic ballast, if you want to call it that. I just call it pre-bedded, but it's supposed to be ballast. And the negative, most railway modelers do not think this is realistic enough, although if you look at the rails, they've kind of pre-aged them just a bit. They're not quite so bright and shiny as standard track that you go and buy. You don't have to work too hard on aging them if you're into aging them. I don't age my track. I'm just not into that detail of realism. Cool if you are. But it comes pre-bedded. Although, if you look up some of the German rail, there definitely are many areas where they have sort of this dark gray to black ballasting with your standard light gray, whitish rocks in between. So it's not completely unrealistic. It's not non-prototypical. It's just not what you're used to seeing. But to many purists, it's just not realistic. The other issue is it is plastic. It is hard plastic, and of course the plastic doesn't necessarily look like stone or rock. I mean, you have to get up close to see that. You can try to see the detail in there, the bedding. But Germany, especially northern Germany, is a very I don't want to say swampy. It used to be swamp, but it's a very sandy, gritty soil, and so they do pile their ballast up a lot higher. And I have been to many places in Germany where they do use a black or a dark gray ballast to really raise the bed of the track up, and then white ballast in between the running lines. All right, but Märklin's original M-Track was the same way, but very unrealistic. It was a very tannish brown, and I'll try to post a picture here if I can find one of M-Track, just so you can look at that. But it was also pre-bedded. Now, the advantage of pre-bedded is, as I showed in the last video, so I don't want to repeat too much, is the fact that, all right, Märklin, of course, has the little studs in the middle for 3 rail. Go back to video 2 if you want to understand that. But it conducts the electricity, but it also allows for 3 contact points, which gives you more contact points than standard 2 rail, and thus you're less likely to have dead spots where your wheels can't read the energy flow. So there are advantages to the Märklin style of track, 3-rail track. The disadvantage, of course, of the nubs. But anyhow, the advantage to C-Track is the underneath. If you look at this underneath, there's plenty of room for running what wiring you want to. You don't have to drill under your table except maybe for one access point. But you have grooves through here. It holds your lines. You're not worried about where you're going to have to drop lines. You just run it underneath your track. But also then these contacts. You have your contacts here. Instead of fish plates, which can slide, although again, you don't read too many people complain about fish plates. But Märklin Track connects more strongly, more sturdier without soldering than regular track. And the advantage of that is also if you have to replace a piece of track or if you want to change part of your system, because you don't have soldering, you don't have to worry about where you're going to cut. You can just take pieces out. Now, Märklin connects, if you look, there are these plastic channels here. All right, there is a male and a female connection, and obviously the next track would be the opposite. And they just go together, and you just click them. Now, a lot of people try to take them apart the same way, but that's just it. If you try to take them apart, and I'm pretty good pull on here. I'm really pulling on these. You can't pull them apart. They're going to stay together. But the problem is a lot of people who get into Märklin don't pay attention to how you should take them apart. I know I didn't when I started. I would try to twist like this and get frustrated. And eventually it'd come apart. Now, the way you take Märklin pieces apart is you put your thumbs on both sides of the join, and you push with your thumbs in and lift with your fingers here. Now, you'd think this is nothing that needs explained, but it does. And you push them apart, and you hear that clasp. That's how they come apart. You basically create a V. The negative side is that people who take them apart incorrectly, consistently, or don't, really create the V, or they'll only try to break up one side. These break. These little plastic bits break. It's plastic. It's hard. It dries out. And if you look here on this curve, you can see in here, one of the little plastic parts broke. You can still use this, but it's not advisable. If you look here, the male part, the plastic completely broke off. This is now relatively useless. You could kind of try to use it, but it's going to be loose. You can't guarantee the contacts are tight on each other, and it's going to create, a little loss of power. Not necessarily tremendously, but it's not worth it. And that's the real drawback, because, let me set that down there. When you break a piece, this turnout, which is $8, $10, $14, $15 in your 2-rail or even in the Märklin C-Track, this is a $20 to $25 piece. And you break one little piece of plastic, you can try to super glue it, but it's kind of like you've just lost that $15 to $25 you spent on this piece, where other turnouts are definitely a lot less. The other negative is, going back to the pieces, Märklin is hard plastic. This plastic dries over years and gets more brittle, which means it's more likely to break when you take it apart the older it gets. People who put the outs together in the 90s, when they go to take them apart, they break them, and it breaks in all sorts of places. You'll get cracks here. As I mentioned, these pieces, which are the weak points, will crack and break. But that's your pros and cons. Your pro is they stick together nicely. They really have tight connection where the electricity is going to flow through. They're easy to install. You don't have to lay corkboard down. You don't have to do nearly as much wiring or soldering, because if you want to put a light function in, a light function connects right there. You don't have to drill through the table and pull the light down and run it through your bus wiring. The lights connect right here. You put it under the ballast, so if you're going to do lights like you would in any system, you're going to put your lights in before you ballast. But you just connect it right here. You don't have to drop, imagine drilling through your table, dropping all your drop lines down and connecting to your bus lines to your various connection points, especially if you're doing a small layout. If you're doing a massive layout, then you probably still want to run your lights separately. But with Märklin, you really can run and power a lot of your accessories straight from the track, the same power source running it, without the decline in power that you might see in 2-rail. So the Märklin 3-rail itself, but again, with K-Track and 3-rail, you are going to do some soldering. The other issue, and I did a video on this for the Model Train Outsider, is if you have motorized turnouts. Again, you're dropping lines down. You have to drop anywhere between 3 to 7 electrical lines down per turnout to motorize a turnout, and if you're going to digitize it. With Märklin, it's all done inside here. That they have pre-bedded areas here where you put the motor to operate the turnout. You can put a digital decoder, and they all plug in right here. There's no dropping lines on the table and running them. It just runs through there, and you set the addresses like I demonstrated, and it's all self-contained. You are doing so much less soldering, so much less wiring through the Märklin system. That is the major pro. And everything Märklin comes with these wires here. In this case, this is from a powering system. Now, I don't have the controller of the powering system set up, but I just want to show it. It has these tabs. Now, if you want to solder these, you can. Just drop a little bit of solder on them to make sure they don't slide off. But let me set this one down and do it on a straight, where it's a little less. But you just find the tab, and these slide right on, and then you can just bed your wiring through the gaps here. If you're going to run, let's say a shunting system, or a stopping braking system, everything plugs in right here, and you run the wire under the bed, through the next connections, onto each bit of track. And that's the nice thing about the Märklin C-Track system. It really is, as I mentioned in a previous Model Train Outsider video, it is track for dummies. The pros of the C-Track system are less wiring, less soldering, easy. You can lay a lot more track. It's already pre-cut for you to different lengths. When you're doing 2-rail, you go buy a 3-foot section or whatever, and you cut it to whatever specs you need. Although, yes, they do sell some pre-cut sections, but most people who do 2-rail are constantly cutting and recutting. You don't have to do that with C-Track. They have a complete algorithm. There are different lengths, like here's a 172, here's a 188, this is a 229, there's 236, then there are 360s, which are just a 188 and a 172 combined. As I said, Märklin tries to do everything based on multiples of 360, but because not everything lines up perfect, they give you multiple sizes that fit any algorithm. I mean, this is the Germans, if you want to say that. Germans and their high efficiency, their meticulousness, their attention to detail. So Märklin has it laid out, and there are tens of thousands of free layout diagrams. Märklin has published book after book, and Märklin does the algorithm for everything, including their track. For example, here's a turnout. Now, a turnout is basically a 188 piece. I don't know if you can see that. It's the same length as a Märklin 188, and then it is a radius 1 curve coming off. That's their standard turnout. And then they already have pre-cut pieces. They make what's called a 224. So the 224 fits in on the curve there, and you take a 172. And now, if you, whoops, I just put the 188 on there. My apologies. You take a 172, and they're now level. So basically, you can run the same pieces. Märklin does this for you. Everything is designed so that everything lines up. So when you want to build on to something, the turnouts are measured. So this is standard gapping for German rail when you're creating a sideline or a branch off or what have you from your turnout, or a join if you want to call it that way. But they've set it all up. So now you have a piece that is 360. There's their standard 360. You got a radius 1 curve branching off. So they have everything is pre-cut and pre-measured for Märklin. And their books and their everything tell you how to do it. So it's really a simple system, especially if you're starting off with track. If you're starting off with model trains like I am, okay, I'm 3 years, little over 3 years into the hobby now. I'm not exactly a rookie, but I'm still learning and learning. I was into C-Track before I knew I was into C-Track. I got the train for Christmas. My kids bought Märklin Track, which happened to be C-Track. That was what was advertised and out there. So I was doing C-Track. Had somebody sat down and explained the differences of AC and DC to me, had explained the difference between K-Track and C-Track, would I have chosen C-Track? And at first my answer would be, I don't know, I might have done the other stuff. But as I look back, knowing me, because I'm a bit lazy, I don't like to do very tedious work, I probably would have chosen C-Track. It's so easy. You put your train on, it's plug and play, to use the new computer age terminology. You just plug your trains in, you put your track together, run whatever you want to onto the track itself. It's simple, it's direct, a lot less drilling of holes, a lot less wiring, a lot less hassle. The drawback of the maybe lack of realism in the track, in terms of does it really look like what you'd see out in the world? Well, in some places, actually, yes, it does. The drawback of that lack of reality and maybe a little bit of the brittleness. Let me grab one of these curves over here. You can see there's one that cracked, and you see here the main joints. Whoops, there we go. The main joints are fine. It's just because when I was beginning a long time ago, I tried to take it apart that way, and I snapped that. That's, what will happen. But yeah, these tracks, because it's a hard plastic, will get brittle with age. Now, if you're just putting them down in your layout and going, you're not going to worry about it. There is one other drawback I was saving for last, and that is more expensive. Märklin C-Track, because of the plastic and the 3-rail, is probably 3 times, maybe 4 times the cost of just a similar length of 2-rail track that you would buy at your local hobby store. It is more expensive. A box of 188s can cost around $30. You'd get 10 of these for about $30. So these are about $3 a piece. That's going to cost you in the long run. But because of the less wiring you're doing, everything's already pre-digital and ready to go, and it's plug-and-play ease. I think, for me, the pros outweigh the cons. This is, if you were ever thinking, if you're one of the people watching this video that's never really done model training, this is train track for modern digital train tracks for dummy. It's already digitized. You just plug in what you want to plug in and it runs. It's like a USB port on a computer. You just plug in what you want to plug into it and boom, it's instantly working. That's what you have here. All right, so that is a look at Märklin C-Track. So I will say auf Wiedersehen, and I'll see you back for episode 4.